Welcome back, guys, to the Digital Pen Pals podcast. My name is Zach, and I'm here with my co-host, Lincoln.
Hi.
Today is a very, very special episode. We're super stoked. We're here with the amazing Purpah. I probably pronounced it wrong. But her name's Melanie, and she is the creator and artist behind Suitor Armor on Webtoons. How you doing, Melanie?
Doing good. How about you?
Doing fantastic. So yeah, we're super excited, and we're just super honored that you would even be willing to come onto a podcast, our little podcast of ours, and us be able to talk to you and get to understand a little bit more about you. And what is it that you do, Melanie?
I am a writer, creator, artist, jack of all trades, I guess, for the Webtoon comic Suitor Armor. It's a vertical comic that you can read on your phone, so it's kind of a different format than traditional comics. But yeah, I basically spend all day drawing and writing episodes for that.
And I will say Suitor Armor is fantastic. I kind of talked about this before we started recording, but Zach told me about our guest on Friday, and I was not aware of Suitor Armor and Purpah before this, and I binged the entire series Suitor Armor over the weekend, and my rating's 10 out of 10, and if you haven't read it, you should read it. It's fantastic.
Indeed. Amen to that. It is a fantastic comic. I love the art style, and I love the sense of direction with the story, and I just think it's such a good read. It's one of those. It's just it's so fun, but yet it still captures your interest because it's endearing, and you feel like you can relate to pretty much any of the characters there, I think.
Yeah, and I got sucked into it this weekend. It was so good. And Melanie, could you explain just a little rundown of what Suitor Armor is about? I feel like I wouldn't do it justice.
Well, Suitor Armor takes place in sort of a medieval fantasy world, and you start off by following this girl Lucia, who's lady-in-waiting to the future queen. They've just arrived at the castle before the wedding, so it's the period before the wedding, and they meet during a tournament this enchanted suit of armor, who is later named Modius. And it's the developing relationship between Lucia and Modius. And Lucia also has a secret. She is actually a fairy living amongst the humans. And it's about these two kind of learning how to be themselves in a way. Lucia has had to hide her true self pretty much her entire life. Even her best friend doesn't know. And Modius is slowly evolving a consciousness and awareness and ability to think for himself. So they sort of bounce off of each other as they sort of come into their own. And there's a war going on, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. But
there's a bunch of fun plot stuff.
Yeah, it's multi-layered. It's a cake. It's got multiple tiers going on. But that's sort of the main gist, is following those two specifically.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so interesting. And how long have you been doing this for?
I think the concept of Suitor Armor was in 2018, and I started posting it on Webtoon Canvas in 2019. So I've been doing it, I think, steadily since 2019, so roughly 2 years now.
Holy, so much work into that, and I just binged it over a weekend.
and just so I understand, because I'm really interested in webtoons. That's one of my things that I would love to do myself, is to make a webcomic. So webtoons is your full-time job, right? I'm assuming.
Yep.
That's fantastic. And how long have you been full-time then for webtoons?
Let's see. It started in 2019 because Webtoons is very unique in their format compared to other mobile comic apps because they have Canvas, which allows anyone to post their stories so long as, follow the rules and don't post anything that breaks those rules. So I was doing it on the side while I was looking for work in the animation industry. So it was just something to keep me sane. And then I was approached about it I think I posted 6 chapters when I was approached by Webtoon to turn it into an original. So technically, I've been sort of working for them for like a year and a half. It was a long pre-production process because there was like all the paperwork and kind of refining stuff and speaking with the editors about changes that I wanted to make. Because originally Lucia wasn't going to be revealed to be a fairy until like midway through season 1, and
Her beautiful wings would have been hidden.
yeah, and it was decided that it was better to reveal it in the first episode, so like the readers were in on this secret. So every time she's almost discovered or she's facing something, like people are talking negatively about fairies in front of her, the readers are kind of going through that experience with her.
That makes sense.
And I definitely felt like, I feel like seeing the wings at the beginning, like I felt like it was unexplained. Like I didn't know what she was until like later on in the series, but it was really like captivating, and it like kept me like so interested in her as a character.
Yeah, it's a change that I was it was a big change in a way for me because I hadn't written it like that. But when they suggested that, I was like, that makes sense. I like that. Yes, let's do that instead. Sorry, I kind of went off there for a second. But yeah, a year and a half with them as a full-time job, although it didn't really get rolling until like after the paperwork and all of the like the contracts and everything. That was the stressful part before I got to do the fun part.
Right. That's crazy. And like what stage of like following and stuff were like how viewed was your comic before you got approached by Webtoon? Like was there like just they saw a spark in it and they're like, ooh, we got to snag this before, it gets too big kind of thing? Or where was that point that they started to talk to you?
Let's see. Funny thing about that was, let's see, I had posted there were only 6 chapters up before they approached me, and I think I was sitting around 40,000 subscribers to the story.
Wow.
And they had the pre-COVID, when we were able to do things, they had this Canvas creator kind of mini convention event that was happening right before LA Comic-Con, which would allow Webtoon people to come together. Canvas creators were there, and there was a panel of original creators, and we all got to get together and kind of ask the original creators things. And like Rachel from Lore Olympus was there, and a bunch of people that I really looked up to, and we got to wear these name tags that had our stories on them. And I was told later that they were already planning on reaching out and offering it to me while I was there, but they couldn't say anything to me.
Oh no.
Like official, so I was just there being a Canvas creator going like, oh man, wouldn't it be great if I could be one of them?
Well, everyone's in on it.
Wow.
Yeah, basically.
That's like a Disney story right there. It's just like you're just on the brink of success, right?
Yeah, I told them later too that they extended the offer to me, and I jumped on it immediately. And then like a couple of days later, I got an offer from Hiveworks, which is more of a traditional comic format, but they have a website and they sort of sponsor other comics. Like it's basically like an older format of Webtoon, except it's a website instead. And so they approached me asking, and I said, I'm sorry, I already accepted another offer. And when I told Webtoon that, they were like, oh my gosh, no, not Hiveworks.
Yeah,
but there's nothing wrong with Hiveworks. But right. They were like,
Webtoons is just a bit cooler, right?
I'm not gonna dump on Hiveworks, but like it wouldn't have been a good fit for me personally. But yeah, it was divine timing in a way.
That's so incredible. So what piece of advice would you give to someone out there who's, say, like an aspiring Webtoons artist, or someone who's maybe at the spot that you were right before you got it's a sponsorship, right? What's the official term? Sorry.
Webtoon original.
Okay, so yeah, so as to somebody that's like kind of like aspiring to get a Webtoons original, what word of advice would you give to them?
I think definitely when it comes to making a Webtoon, because I think it's totally possible to make it all Webtoon in Canvas as well, even if you're not extended the offer of being an original. But learning how to really utilize the format, because it's told in episodes. You're posting an episode weekly, which for comics is a little I mean, like, they had issues in like original physical format of comics, but the episodes on Webtoons are significantly shorter. So learning how to utilize the pacing, usually ending the episode on sort of a cliffhanger or giving the readers sort of a hint as to what's going to come next. So they're like, oh man, I can't wait for this to update. Because if you can utilize the storytelling in a webtoon, I feel like you're able to grab people's attention. This is something I've had to learn in kind of like a trial by fire, because it's a very different way of storytelling. And like all of my illustration classes, and Zach would know this, is like when you're in an illustration class, they teach you how to make comics in the traditional format.
Yeah.
So it's very different from the vertical scrolling that I had to adapt to. And I feel really embarrassed admitting this, but when I was doing Suitor Armor on Canvas, I was actually making the story up as I went along, because it was just a side project.
Yeah,
it's having fun.
Yeah, and so when they approached me and offered me becoming a Webtoon original, I was like, oh crap, I have to actually figure out where this is going now.
You're like, oh yes, I have the entire story for 2 years planned out.
I'm pretty sure that I came out with an outline in like a week for like the entire story, because they were like, all right, so we'll want an outline to kind of like know where the story's going. And
that's stressful.
So this job is wonderful. I wouldn't have it any other way, but it is stressful.
Like, I'd be like, this is fun, but I've never been more stressed in my life.
Yeah, basically.
Well, so I will say you are one of the very first, or Suitor Armor, should I say, is the very first webtoons that I've ever read. And as somebody coming from, like, I used to read manga a lot in high school, and then I also would read a lot of the Pokemon comics growing up, I felt a lot more engaged with the webtoons. And I felt like every time I'd finished an episode, I'd like want to read the next. Like, I was so upset when I finally reached the end, because I'm like, when I started, I'm like, I got 24 episodes, I got a while, and then like, boom, it's gone. I'm done with it, and I'm like, oh no, I gotta sign up for this thing where I get the 3 new episodes. Like, so you definitely did a good job at keeping me entertained and captivated. And I love, I don't know if you did this for every chapter, but basically like the ending word of one chapter would be or episode, should I say, is the starting word for the next episode. And that's something that like happens pretty consistently. And I saw that, I'm like, oh, it's starting with the last word that was said.
Yeah, that's something I picked up reading other webtoons. And like when you were asking about how people would want to make a webtoon, read a webtoon. Like, you need to read other webtoons if you're gonna make
some
them.
Research, right?
Yeah, like look at what's the most popular and how artists do things. Like, and I guarantee, like, if you're making a webtoon, figuring out how to space the panels so you have at least, I think, 2 to 3 panels showing on the phone at all times, unless something suspenseful is happening. You want it to take longer to scroll, because again, like, it's such a unique format. It's weird, and you have to kind of figure out how to utilize. Yeah, it's the future.
Yeah, I've seen like a lot of webtoons, some that I've read, that really utilize, I'm sure you have as well, with like with the scroll, the movement of the scroll, they know that. And so as you're scrolling, like, they have like really long panels that just like with a gradient slowly transition to the next scene, which is just incredible, because it almost starts to implement like techniques of like animation. And I've also seen webcomics that have like actual music and animation in them, like little GIFs and stuff. And I'm like, that's just so like intriguing. It does more than what just like printed comics can do.
Yeah.
My favorite is when you have like a daytime scene and the background behind the panels is white, and then you go to like maybe a dungeon scene or like a nighttime scene, and those background panels change colors to black, and it's like something that you don't notice, but like it sets the mood. Just like, it's just there.
Yeah, that was a tip that one of my illustration teachers was actually. I remember him talking about, and again, he was talking in a traditional comic format, but it still translates into webtoons, saying he was saying, like, if you can, try experimenting with your panels, make them interesting. And obviously, like, you can't do too many crazy shapes with webtoon panels, or else it gets a little distracting. But utilizing the white space behind it was something else that he taught, and so I kind of brought that in just for environmental, like, scene change. That way I don't have to do a bunch of background shots to establish where we are.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess, like, one question I have, because you're talking earlier about like having to have the whole story sort of like pretty much most of it like planned out, right? How do you? Because I know I've heard of some webtoon artists, since they publish so often, they'll usually have like they're at least like an episode or two ahead of the deadline, so that way they're sitting on a comic that's already finished and they wait to publish it. Is that something
Yeah.
that you do, or is it a different? I'm not really sure how it works.
You definitely, a lot of artists definitely have, like, what they call a buffer.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
So, like, if you need a sick day or if a chapter's taking a long time. So yes, definitely have a buffer. Currently, I do not have one. I'm working week to week.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Dang, I was gonna ask for you to spoil the entire series for us.
Darn it. Oh, I am working. I have, like, an episode outline where I have the list of episodes, what happens in each episode, at least for season 1 at the moment. But yeah, as of right now, I have no buffer, so I'm working week to week, which is just a joy. It's wonderful.
Well, that's awesome. I'm so happy to be introduced to webtoons through Suitor Armor, and I'm so excited to read the rest. So that begs the question: what programs do you use to create Suitor Armor? Is it just paper, pencil, markers, Photoshop, tablet? What do you use?
Originally, I do all my art digitally, so I have a Wacom. I think this is an older model. It's way older. I got this back in high school. A 24-inch HD Cintiq from Wacom.
Nice.
Yeah, I got real lucky.
Yeah. Stands the test of time if you got in high school.
Yeah, it's definitely. I would like to upgrade at some point because it's very chunky for a tablet.
Wow.
In comparison.
You just need to get Wacom to sponsor you.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're like, that sweet Wacom money, where is it? Yeah, my friend's dad was an illustrator, and he did everything traditionally, and then he tried moving over into digital. He hated it, and so his daughter told, like, oh, I have a friend who wants to be a digital artist, and he's like, okay, cool, she can have it because I don't want it.
Oh
So
my
he just
gosh.
got it.
Wow.
Yeah, I got spoiled.
That is awesome.
Little did they know.
Yeah, seriously, I should probably pay him back for the Wacom
Now
tablet.
you're a superstar.
So yeah, I use that, and then I used a mixture of Clip Studio Paint and Photoshop until Clip Studio Paint had their update where they now have settings that are specifically for making webtoons.
Whoa.
So
That's
Oh
cool.
shoot!
Yeah, they
I gotta
now-
get on that. I've been
Yeah.
stuck in Photoshop, and I've been trying to make the leap.
oh, not
I just use Procreate.
Adobe. Don't come after me, Adobe, but cancel your Adobe subscription and just use Clip Studio Paint. Yeah, like, their canvases are. They now have canvases that are catered to the dimensions of a webtoon. You can view. They have, like, this, like, box you can put over the canvas that shows what you would see on a phone screen.
Oh wow.
That's
So you can
incredible.
you can export it now into the sliced images that you need to upload to the Webtoon website. Yeah, I mean, use whatever works best for you. Like, I know Rachel from Lore Olympus, she still uses Photoshop because that's what works for her. So whatever works for you. It's just, for me, Clip Studio Paint has made tools to make my job a lot faster and a lot easier. But honestly, like, I think her username is I Can Draw Things. She is on Canvas and is the artist and author behind The Blind Prince, which is stunning and I highly recommend. But I know that she uses Procreate. So anyone can make a webtoon on, honestly, any of those programs. I just prefer Clip Studio Paint because of all the tools they have, including like their 3D assets and stuff.
Right. That's awesome. And like, what's your process? Do you like do like just sketch everything out a little bit for the week, and then like what's your process of making a webtoon per week?
I first start off with the script, and my scripts can be a little loose because sometimes the dialogue I write comes off as like really stiff when I'm actually like putting it in the episode, and so sometimes it'll change. But I write a script and then I thumbnail it. So just planning out, and they're like, I'm pretty sure if I handed someone my thumbnails, they would not be able to tell what they were.
You could tweet a picture of it and be like, "Hey, look, guys, spoilers, but you can't see what's going on."
Yeah, basically.
I think that's Modius.
Like, okay, Modius is probably the easiest character to pick out of my thumbnails because it's a blob with two pointy things coming off the top.
That's
of it.
awesome.
They're so iconic. I love their design so much.
I'm glad. Yeah, let's see. And then thumbnails, and then I do sketches, and I used to take a really long time sketching, but when you're only doing it, when you only have a week before you have to turn in an episode, my sketches have gotten a lot sloppier, and then like my inking is where I am a lot cleaner and neater. And then I hand it off to my colorist, and she just does the flat colors for me. It's a huge time saver for me.
Oh yeah, I bet.
And then when I get those back from her, that's when I'll typically add in the text and backgrounds. If I have enough time, I'll do the text and backgrounds before I send them off to my colorist. Yes, and then usually I'll get the Webtoon people will send it back to me and notify me that there's some typing errors. I'm not a good speller, and Clip Studio doesn't have like spell check when you type in the dialogue.
There's hope for me, Zach. There's hope for me.
Yeah. I sometimes will hand off a script to someone I trust, and I'm like, please point out any spelling errors. Because even like Google Docs won't pick up some of the spelling errors.
Do you have like Grammarly? That's been helping me lately, actually.
Yeah, Grammarly,
I might
please
look
sponsor
into
us.
it.
That one's actually really good. Like I downloaded it thinking I'd never use it, and then actually I use it all the time now. I'm like, wow, this is actually amazing.
No, Grammarly's
Oh, my word.
So that might be something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll get comments sometimes of people being like, this was misspelled. And I'm like, well, did you know what the sentence is saying? Because if so, then obviously it wasn't that big.
You're like, it was intentional.
Yes, I didn't realize this until later, but I don't know why I thought this was a thing. But for some reason, I thought that like when you type in dialogue in a comic, unless there's like a question mark or an exclamation point, that if it's in a bubble, there's no need to put a period. And people notice that, and they're like, why is there never periods at the end of sentences? And I'm like,
wait,
well, it's
That's
a
a
thing now.
I guess.
No, I thought it was,
Weird.
but like now I'm looking at the comics I own and looking at them as reference. I'm like, okay, that was definitely just me being stupid, but now I'm too stubborn to not do that. So
Yeah, it's like your little calling card, right?
Yeah, she doesn't put periods at the end of her sentences.
Because the
That's
story
like me.
keeps
I
going.
type in all lowercase.
That's awesome.
Just whatever you can still read it. You don't need a period to read it.
Right?
Yeah, I didn't get caught up. I didn't notice any spelling errors through the entire binging of Suitor Armor. So
Yay.
I noticed some, but I'm just weird like that because I kept pausing because I kept adoring all the artwork and like trying to figure out. I'm like, because I always like just like from school, I always now like analyze people's artwork and I'm like, wow, I love this. What makes it amazing? And I look around, I'm like, how did she do this? I'm like, ooh, she's like a gradient here, some texture here. Okay. Kind of plotting in my head, figuring out how to do it so I can do it one day. But
And like one of the best pieces of advice I got from another webtoon artist, a Graveweaver who does I Am the Grim Reaper, which is amazing. Highly recommend that one too. I'm just plugging all the people I love here.
I've got a little notes thing on my phone here with a few so far.
But she posts a lot of kind of tutorials or Q&As for aspiring webtoon artists, so definitely check her out. But she said that like not all your panels are gonna look good. You're gonna look back at episodes and think they look ugly in comparison to what you're doing now, and you just kind of have to make your peace with that because this is a high-paced, fast reading, you know, like Tuck said, you know, like you binge read it in 24 hours. I don't remember how long
it was like over
you.
the weekend. It was
over
like
the
in
weekend,
bursts.
and that was like a year and a half of my life you read in a weekend.
I'm sorry.
my
It was
gosh.
too good. It was too
Oh,
good.
man.
I'm sorry.
like you have to understand, like you just have to remind yourself, like people are only going to be looking at a panel for like half of a second before they move on to the next one. So sometimes the proportions are weird, but you know, save your nitpicking for those impact panels where you're like, this is going to be someone's phone background.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I can tell those, like, I feel like every other episode at least has like one of those kind of panels where you're like, ooh, that's sick.
I think it's
like,
funny that you mentioned that because my phone background is it's Norix, and he's asking Lucia to be the apprentice. I really like this.
Oh my gosh, that was so many people's background.
I was like, Norix is my favorite character. I sense some deviousness about him, but I love him. He's great.
It's really funny because when I sent in my stuff for Webtoon and everything at the beginning, when getting like character files and the outline and everything, apparently Norix is also a fan favorite over at the home office. Webtoon.
I've been growing out long hair recently, and while reading it, I was debating putting together a cosplay for Norix, and I really want to. That would be so cool.
You would work it so well.
I don't know if there's been any cosplayers yet for Suitor Armor, so if there's been none for Norix, I want to be the first, and I'll hop on that real fast.
There's been a couple. There's been a handful for Lucia and one for Norix that I've seen so far.
I'll be the second. I have to hop on that right now.
I have yet to see someone be brave enough to tackle Morbius, but I'm not about to.
I have a 3D printer. Bet.
It'll just take like months to print the armor. It's fine.
For real. So.
I mean, he's already a pain to draw. I could not imagine cosplaying.
Oh, man.
That would be ridiculous.
You could walk around in spray painted cardboard and I'd be happy, honestly. I'd be like, good, yes, please don't hurt yourself.
You could cosplay as your little thumbnail sketches of him, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
More simple.
Lines.
Just
one of the stories I don't read because people compare it to a time is Full Metal Alchemist. I have seen panels of the armor dude where he's just like a blob with the horn and then like a little cat face like for the panels where the artist just didn't want to draw him. And I'm like, I wish I could do that, but people would think I was ripping it off.
Right.
Full Metal Alchemist is pretty good. Would recommend.
I've heard. I can't wait to finish this series so I can finally watch it. It's probably gonna be like 6 years from now, but I can't wait to watch it.
I stand beefy hunks of metal in this household.
Yes.
So that brings up the question: who is your favorite character in your own comic? Feel free to brag about them.
Oh my gosh.
I already bragged about Norix. I think he's the greatest ever.
It's so hard to answer. It's like, who's your favorite child?
You have to pick one.
I love them all for very different reasons. I think, oh my gosh, it's so difficult. All right, I'm gonna jump on the Norix bandwagon.
There we go. Let's go.
Nice.
Like I love all my babies. I do. I think his dialogue and showing snippets of his backstory are some of the most enjoyable to write. And I know everybody has got opinions on Norix.
He's my crush.
It's funny, there's no in between. Everybody seems to be either for or against Norix. But yeah, he's very complicated. To be fair, everyone is kind of complicated. And I think after Norix, it would be Lucia, because a lot of her personal struggles and character development are things that I took from my life. And so writing her is kind of, when people criticize her, it feels like a personal, because I'm like, oof, I went through that. Ow.
Like, stop making fun of her. You're making fun of me.
Yeah, ouch, my feelings.
Don't hurt my fragile little wings.
And then, yes. And then right after that, right after her would be Modius, because he's the example of, I do not like it when people compare him to a baby. He's not a child. Get that across right now. Not a child. He just has a very basic understanding of what it is to be alive at the beginning of the story, which is to follow orders and do what he's told. And writing the evolution of that, of him learning new things, and like life is messy and complicated. So watching him and writing him learning as he goes is an interesting concept, because again, he's not a child, so I'm not writing him like he's a child. So, and again, we don't see something come into sentience this far along or whatever. Like, he's an enchanted suit of armor, so I haven't seen that done before in the way that I'm doing it, so it feels exciting writing it, because I'm like, I have no idea. I have nothing to go off of here.
Yeah, no, I love it so much, because I guess with the Fullmetal Alchemist comparison, just for context, there's like a kid basically inside the suit, or at least like the kid's soul inside the suit. So it's somebody that was a human and grew up and had a human experience, and then misfortune happened and now he's inside the suit of armor.
Gotcha.
And that's explained within the first few episodes, so that's not really a spoiler. But I love him so much. He's the best. And I was so upset because I think the episode I just left off on, he's like finally starting to like understand things and become like sentient, and I'm like, oh, I want more.
He's coming into his own slowly but surely. I like drawing things out.
Yeah. And like, what was like the inspiration? I know you said you basically just kind of threw it together and were throwing on Webtoons before you got even approached, but like, what was the inspiration from it, and like, has it turned into something more passionate for you as like a story and as characters as time has gone on, or how's that been?
It's definitely evolved from, originally it came from a dream I had. Actually,
dreams are the best.
A lot of my ideas come from dreams, and obviously dreams are just like, they don't come with any kind of a plot line or anything. So all that the dream really was about an enchanted suit of dark armor falling in love with a girl. That was the dream. And I woke up and I was like, ooh, I like that. And I drew the characters. I think like the first drawing I did of Modius and Lucia, and then I posted it on Tumblr and told people about the dream, and it took off, and I was like, wow, people really seem interested in this concept. And so like a year later, I came across that again, and I thought it would be fun to kind of expand it into its own thing. So, like Lucia turned into a fairy, and Modius had this whole backstory, and then there were all the other characters. So, and it kind of took off in its own thing. And I realized when I was a lot younger, I really enjoyed fairies. Like, I had little like statues of fairies in my room. My wallpaper had like fairies all over it. I used to make little fairy houses in the backyard, and I'm having like a handbook on how to do it, and there were rules, like you couldn't make them with anything man-made or anywhere near something man-made, or else fairies wouldn't go and live in the house. Wow. And I guess I fell out of it because, fairies were too girly. And then I've kind of refound my love of them creating this. And I was like, screw everybody else. I want to write about fairies again.
I love that fae aesthetic. And I feel like it's captured very well in Suitor Armor.
Oh my gosh. Like, I have this book, and they were little mini books when I was a child, and they were called Garden Fairies. And I have the book here. Hold on, give me 1 second, because I want to make sure I get the artist's name correctly.
Yeah.
That story you explained with like being captivated by something at a young age and then kind of giving up on it and then coming back to it. That's my experience, but with Sonic the Hedgehog. Not to diminish your experience, but that's me awesome. With Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, growing up, I loved Sonic.
That's like the boy equivalent of fairies. Sonic!
Sonic is like fairies, but for guys.
He runs fast.
I love that comparison. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I have the book here in front of me. It's called The Complete Book of Flower Fairies by Cecily Mary Barker, and the artwork is gorgeous. And I grew up with these mini books, and I was recently gifted this book, which has all of them in it. And the artwork is something that inspired me a lot in terms of like creating my fairies. It's a combination of this, and then if anyone listening plays Final Fantasy 14.
Oh yes, video game inspiration. Let's go.
Yes, I love the Fae area and the Titania boss fight, which I still need to do because there's still gear that I want from there. Um, but I fell in love with that area, so that's actually where the wings came from. Because I think that boss fight, the fairy had 3-tiered wings in comparison to all the other fairies, and I was like, oh heck yeah! I don't know why, but I like the idea of an extra pair of wings on fairies, so that's why I added another tier on my fairies, because I was like, that looks awesome, and you can never have enough wings on your back anyways.
Right.
I love your approach to fairies, at least as far as the lore that has been revealed so far in the webtoon.
Yes,
but I love the approach.
It,
it feels very fresh.
Yeah, I'm so glad, and something I've been really enjoying in this fantasy setting is no shade against previous fantasy. Like, I love Lord of the Rings, I love all of the previous fantasy, but dang if it ain't vanilla. So I'm injecting as much like character diversity as I can. I was like, we're gonna have POC fairies up the wazoo.
I love that.
That's awesome. And like, how has your life changed since doing this? Like, was it like just overnight all of a sudden? Like, I mean, this must have been like the most exciting thing to ever happen, right?
Honestly, yes. And it came at the perfect time because while I was working on Canvas, Mia and my husband were living with someone at the time. Like, we didn't have our own place. We were literally living in someone's living room on an air mattress. And so when I got this job, we immediately were able to go apartment hunting because we were able to afford it. And where we live, it's pretty darn expensive to get your own place. And we managed to do that. And so we managed to get our own place right after they offered this job to me. And we got settled in, and then COVID hit right after. Wow. And so
perfect timing.
Beyond, yeah, seriously, the timing was kind of a serious blessing. That, and then just being able to do art for a living is it's weird. I don't feel guilty drawing all day because I was like, I'm not getting paid to do this. Like, I'm wasting time when I should be working at my grocery job or whatever. And just it's a weird feeling having so many people read something that I've made. It's a good feeling. Definitely stressful. I try and stay out of the comments as much as I can because I know not everyone is going to enjoy what I do with the characters or where I take the story.
If you need someone to praise your story, come to me. I'm obsessed.
Just having a low day and be like,
just like, oh, let's message text.
Tell me how great I am.
Praise me, please.
That's funny. And also, quick question: do you get paid through salary or is it like hourly? What's the rate that way?
There's a rate. I get paid per episode I send in, so I get a flat rate from an episode, and then I also get a slice of the fast pass. So whenever you fast pass something, I get some of that as well, and the ad revenue as well. So it's income coming from different places. The episode fee is always the same, and then fast pass can fluctuate based on like how many people actually fast passed in that month.
Gotcha.
So how much money is that fast pass? Because I've been interested in that. I know you have 3 episodes in advance on the fast pass, right?
Yeah. So I think like each fast pass is 5 coins, and if you bought 50 coins, that's $5 for 50 coins. Ooh. Honestly, I know so many people will try and find pirated stuff online, like, because they don't want to wait, they don't want to pay. Honestly, subscription services that you're paying for entertainment, Webtoon is relatively cheap, and it's important to know that when you buy fast pass, you are supporting the creators. That is part of their income, and it is pretty cheap in comparison to other things. So I just think it's important to realize, like, if you are enjoying someone's work on Webtoon and you have like some spare change that you can spare, like, throw it their way and unlock, because so many people on there work so hard and deserve it. And I mean, like, Although, fair warning, once you start fast passing, it's hard to stop because then, like, you would have to
You're
wait.
like, I'm 3 weeks behind. No.
I'm pretty sure every single webtoon I follow and read, I'm fast passing right now.
That's awesome. That's crazy. Like, I don't know. I just think it's so crazy how fast things have happened for you. You know, although it's been like a year and a half or like 2 years now, but like still that's relatively fast for someone who just, you know, was just starting to get into like I know you were looking in the industry to try to find a job and career and stuff that way. And for you, was this like, I mean, it almost seemed like it was like a fun little hobby, but like is this like a good plan B that turned into a plan A, or?
Honestly, I believe so because obviously this wasn't my intended career. I was just like a side thing to keep me from going crazy during the job hunt. But I quickly discovered that I loved doing it because I have a lot of control. But in comparison to like if you were to take your story to like a publisher, a physical publisher, you lose a lot of say in your work. Webtoon is you have an insane amount of control over your own story and characters. And I think it's definitely a good idea to jump on it now, because like Webtoon is already starting to make adaptations from Webtoons that they have. Like I know Lore Olympus got picked up by the Jim Henson Company.
Tower of God was on Crunchyroll, right?
Yeah, there's Tower of God,
That
and I
show's
think
fantastic.
God of High School are also adapted because they partnered with Crunchyroll. And I think the thing that makes it so successful is because it's on your phone. It's accessible to everyone. Everybody has their phone on them now, as opposed to, you know, not everybody's carrying around their physical comic books. I mean, I think, you know, I don't think people should feel like they have to adapt to Webtoon format though. But I think that there are certain advantages, which is why I decided to start posting on there versus like just posting it on social media or on Tumblr or an art website or whatever. But yeah, I think it's entirely possible to make this into a career. And the great thing about Webtoon is there's so many different art styles and different levels of art. You could argue that someone might have more experience doing art on one Webtoon versus others, but that doesn't negate the love that people have and that they'll still read it. Like everybody on Webtoon is at different levels in their own art journey. And so there's various styles and people of all ages, and it's just it's a place that you can go with weird ideas like falling in love with a Suitor Armor and we'll be interested in it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think what's really interesting nowadays is like just the ability to do anything. And I've said this before in like various places, but like I like, cuz like going through school, you feel like you have to work for like an industry or you have to fit some sort of mold. And for some people that does work, and that's exactly where people belong, you know. But for me, it's like I feel like I had so many different ideas of what I want to do. I mean, we're doing this podcast, for example, and me and Lincoln stream as well, and that's something that was like a plan B, but like kind of turned into a plan A, where I'm like, okay, actually, I like this. Let's keep doing this. And just being general content creators, doing YouTube videos and stuff like that has been, you know, something I've been passionate about, and trying to figure out how to meld that with like art. And so like, it's kind of interesting to see how we're kind of like changing the whole field of art. The whole industry is changing where you can do anything. You don't have to work for anybody to make your own comic, to make whatever art you want. If you want to make a full-on movie, you could totally do that if you're skilled enough, of course, but like you can just do anything. And I think that's what's really amazing about like the art field now. It's just anyone and anybody can do that. I mean, there's cons to that as well, definitely, but the power that you feel and the ability to control your own destinies is so much more than it used to be back in the day, where you had to work under a status of a company or something, or some sort of animation industry or whatever, some studio to make yourself known. But now it's like you can really just put out your own stuff, and like your proof of that is just things can happen.
Yeah, there's definitely this pressure of going into if you're going to go into art, it's best to go the traditional way. Because there's already a stigma against like being an artist. Like, how are you going to pay the bills, or how are you going to make this career? But technology has expanded options so far, and I love it, not only because I'm able to experience and benefit from it, but it allows for unique stories to be told that might not have made it through the process of being pitched to a studio or to publishers. Again, that thing of answering to other people and their vision versus going out and creating your own unique story, which is just allowing for so much diversity and storytelling and characters. And I'm finding so many things online now, and I'm just like, that probably would never have been picked up, but it's super successful anyway, and now they want to pick it up. it's really
like proving
funny.
the system doesn't quite work anymore. It's like, hey, if you guys weren't so stingy, we could actually get some really awesome stories out in the works.
Yeah, there's so many, and sometimes people opt to just keep going on their own, like, because they're making enough money on their own where they were like, no, I'm gonna keep this for myself, thanks. And having that option. And yeah, I'm so grateful that we're in a world right now where we're able to do that. Yay internet.
Yeah.
Yay internet.
That's awesome. If like you had like one thing that you could like let people know about like reading your comic, what do you wish people would get from your comic that they could understand?
Well, I hope it does come across, but the main thing that I'm really trying to share through this story is because all of these characters that kind of group together have something different about themselves that they're kind of either made fun of for, or not taken seriously for, or are considered dangerous. But at the end of the day, like, everybody is different, and that's no excuse to belittle them or to dehumanize them. So I'm really and especially with Lucia's character, that kindness and compassion is not a weakness. Being kind and compassionate does not mean that you're a doormat, because I'd like to think that Lucia is not a doormat, and yet she still has those qualities. Because I know a lot of people, I remember growing up, a lot of people criticized like Disney princesses for being too sweet and not having a backbone or whatever. And my favorite Disney princess is Cinderella, and I never liked it when people dunked on her for, she is living with this step family, and they're very, emotionally abusive towards her and stuff, and yet she still manages to come through with being kind and just keeping that kindness with her and not turning bitter. And I think that that's a very admirable quality. And so I just think that when you read Suitor Armor, I hope that people understand that although people are different from them, that doesn't mean that they're dangerous or less. And that if you are different as well, to embrace those differences and understand just like how unique you are.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for being on, and thank you for sharing that wonderful message. Now, before you head out, where can our listeners find you on the internet? Where can they find Suitor Armor? Shout out whatever you want right now.
If they haven't already heard about it.
Yeah. Definitely just Suitor Armor on Webtoon. You can read it on their website. Preferably download their app. It's a lot easier, and that way you can subscribe to stories. You can find me as the Purpah on Tumblr and Twitter. And you can find me under Melpulse on Instagram. You can also type in the Purpah. That will just take you to my personal, and then there's a link to my art one. Username are stupid, and I didn't plan it ahead very well.
We'll all have them in the description.
Yeah, that works.
Don't worry. We'll link them all. We'll link them all for you guys.
And yes, I'm pretty sure that's everywhere I'm at on social media.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for listening today. Go read Suitor Armor. This has been Digital Pen Pals Podcast with the wonderful Purpah, Zach Shirts, and me, Tux Bodai. So thank you so much for listening, and we are so hyped to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you especially for coming to the podcast. we're super excited and really grateful to be able to understand a little bit more about everything. Yeah, we'll catch you guys next week. We post a video every Monday, or podcast that is. But be sure to check all those stuff out every week, and we'll catch you guys next week.